Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 275. I remembered, it is there, it's in front of me. Open your eyes, Coomber, open your eyes. Right, me and Tom are back on the show. Before me and Tom start to drop some information, we've got some cool stuff today. I kind of feel like I'm coaching someone today, but of course we'll see how the dynamic unfolds. Just wanted to say before we start, the launch of our vegan protein as part of Awesome Supplements has been beyond incredible. Thank you very much for everyone's support. And I need to apologise for the fact that we can't keep it in stock. Basically, it's going so well, we just can't get it in soon enough. It keeps selling out. Of course, I'm trying to order more. Of course, that's not an easy thing to do. You don't just order more because you have to have lots of money to do it. So that's obviously a problem that we're facing at the moment. But I just wanted to thank everyone's support because for years and years and years, vegan protein has tasted absolutely dog awful. Gritty, grainy, doesn't taste great. And I'll be honest, we've nailed it. And people can see that. And they're ordering a lot of it, and it's going really well. So I just want to thank everyone for their support. If you want to check it out, go to awesomesupplements.co.uk. It might be in stock by the time you listen to this. Who knows? But thank you. Otherwise, for all your supplement needs in terms of information, do have a look at awesomesupplements.co.uk. I do feel we are doing the right thing when it comes to supplementation and teaching people and giving you products that work and taste good. Tom.
Yo.
What's up?
What's up? I'm good, man. I returned from holiday last weekend. Yeah, last weekend. So not the one just gone, but the one before. And I'm actually still chilled. So it's been nice to actually take a break and come back and sort of rock the last third of the year.
That must mean your boss needs to give you more work to make you stressed out or something.
It sounds that way, but I don't think that's true. No.
Mate, you've just come back from China. Tell me the type of foods that you were eating while in China.
That's quite a good question. So for breakfast, we kind of didn't really bother because we ate a lot later on in the day. And we were just in the apartment anyway. But lunch times was just like takeaway food. So over there, the thing is you can order basically any food you can think of within about 10 minutes via a mobile. So we had loads of different stuff like with breads and meats and vegetables. There's loads of vegetables and everything. But it's the evening meal that was the most interesting. So in China, you sit around a big table, it's usually round, and there's like a spinny thing in the middle so that you can push the food round and you can get it what you want. But it's like all you can eat buffet style, and which sounds like you would end up eating loads of calories, but I think that's partially the reason why, on average, if you notice, Chinese people are quite lean. The foods that are available at like nice restaurants are fresh meats, vegetables, other lean proteins, and you get like a tiny little plate that's sort of, for people on YouTube it's that big, for people on the podcast it's about 4 or 5 inch plate, and you'll pick like one prawn, you'll eat that, and then you'll pick something else, and you'll notice after about half an hour that you're full, but you haven't eaten very much. So it's just the style of eating is so different. As far as types of foods go, the interesting things I ate this time, we had eel, which isn't that weird.
Well, I'll be honest, I've never eaten an eel.
It was really nice. It's like quite a soft fish, but there's like no bones in it. There's one bone down the middle. Yeah. And then that's it. As opposed to most Chinese fish, which you've got like a million bones in. Like if you've ever tried to eat kippers, it's just a pain in the arse. I ate a lot of like intestines, so they do sort of tripe.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because obviously on the inside of your intestine you've got all the villi, which are like the little protrusions. So it's got this really weird mouthfeel that's almost like a hairbrush or something. So that was just awful. There was ox artery one night.
Ooh.
I don't know who decided that was a good thing to eat, but
the way you said it, it was like the centerpiece of the meal.
It more or less was. It was like it came out, and my dad's wife was like, "Oh, this is a really special one. This one's really good." I was like, "The hell is it?" Because it just looked like white lengths of something. I thought it was a vegetable. And through mine and very broken English, we eventually got to, it was an artery. So that was awful.
Now, that is what I respect about Chinese cooking. I don't want to eat all of it, but you've got to respect the fact that they basically take an animal, take every bit of that animal apart and use it in a dish.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the thing is, although we in the West are a little bit squeamish about that kind of stuff, like, it's all good for you. It's full of, like, micronutrients. It's largely lean proteins, so there's nothing wrong with eating it. And if anything, it's us that are doing it wrong by just sort of throwing those bits away.
Yeah, the amount of food waste, and that's the thing, like, then we get upset that companies mangle it all up and put it into things like chicken nuggets and things like that. Well, if we're not prepared to eat it, then there's no point, the food industry, thinking, well, we're not going to throw all this stuff away. And you think about, the amount of, farming that we have that is, the amount of cows and pigs that we're going through. It's a lot of food waste that we do need to use. Like, all this stuff needs to be chopped up. Otherwise, it is going in landfill and other random places. And
well, yeah, it just seems like really, as you say, it's just wasteful. But at the same time, intestine's really unpleasant to eat, so I can't blame anyone.
Yeah, there's a couple of bits that I would say, okay, yeah, fair enough, you won't eat that. And intestines would be up there for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, Thomas, we better get on with the podcast. We've got some banging questions.
Well, we've got some quite long ones as well, so there's quite a lot to go into. So we will start with number 1.
Good place to start.
Okay, so this is Kim. Hi, Ben and Tom. Need some advice on increasing calories and how best to do this. I've purchased your nutrition Bible, which is great, so thanks for that. It worked out that I was under eating calories by about at least 500. Quick background. I'm 35, I weigh about 68 kilograms. I don't know my body fat, but I'm a size 10. I store fat in my stomach and the top of my thighs. I do CrossFit since October and average 4 to 5 sessions per week. I also do Pilates once a week and yoga every now and then. Typically, I'll take 1 to 2 rest days depending on how I feel, and I may do my own workouts on the beach or go for a run, etc. I'm getting better and stronger at CrossFit, and the weights are increasing in the intensity of exercising as I do more RX workouts and less scaled ones. I try and walk where I can, but I do struggle due to work to get the 10,000 steps. I average 3 to 5,000 if I can get a walk at lunch. Based on your guidelines, I've worked out I need the following for training and non-training days. So she's got macros here. Non-training days, it's 1,890 calories, which is 160 grams of carbs, 141 protein, 73 fat. Training days, 2,846 calories, 249 grams of carbs, 213 grams of protein, and 110 grams of fat. My goal is to lean out and tone up. I'm not naturally skinny and I don't want that look. I want to rid myself of some of the wobbly bits and start to see the benefits from working out as I do. I know that getting my nutrition correct is key to this. I'm trying to increase my calories but struggling to get the volume without having massive portions or relying on snacks, which I know isn't great as they tend to be processed. Can you give any advice on how to do this? Also, do you advise doing it step by step, i.e. increasing a bit each month? I'm on 1,800 calories now, whereas before I was on 1,600 or less on non-training days. I have seen some changes, but not as much as I would have hoped. In myself, I have noticed I have more energy at work, so I have more energy at the gym. For my work, I have greater concentration, which I think is because I'm eating more carbs. I train a mix of 6 a.m. fasted with coffee, but meals with carbs at night before. So she'll eat our food the night before and then have coffee and train fasted. Or a 6 p.m. session. I have a meal 2 hours before and are currently experimenting with smaller foods beforehand. I used to just have carbs as a banana, but I'm trying protein also, like yogurt, protein bar or eggs. Each meal I have protein and vegetables. I struggle to get fat in due to years of conditioning that fat is bad, but use good sources. I would say I eat fairly well and a varied source of proteins, etc. I have a wheat intolerance and I'm managing IBS, but that's linked to wheat and stress. For me, the cleaner I can eat, the better. I do have a few drinks at the weekend, such as gin and tonic or wine, but generally only a few every now and then. Maybe more, which I try and reduce calories in the week to compensate. But as I get older, those nights are less appealing due to the hangovers getting worse.
I second that. I've just come home from a festival and I feel like a I don't feel great, basically. I was gonna use a term then that I would use when I was in the rugby club changing room or with my brother, and then I thought, no, I won't use that term on the podcast because it makes me
I saw
sound
your
like
face change. Like I knew what you were going to say just from the. Yeah. So to round this question off, Kim says, "I guess I have the following questions. Number 1, how best should you increase, gradually or all in one go? Number 2, how can you hit calories without eating enormous meals? Number 3, how best can I monitor body fat and weight, etc.? I've been taking pictures but find I'm more critical and therefore less likely to see the results. Number 4, what's realistic for results a year per year, or is it a journey that's different for all people? And number 5, should I try the Zone, which is a diet that's really popular in CrossFit? It looks a bit complicated though, so I thought it might be best to get the basics right first. I hope this isn't too much information, but I thought the more info the better. Finally, I want to add how grateful I am for the content you put out. It's really helped me massively. I listen to the show each week and it's great and so varied. Your supplements are brilliant and the daily dose has massively improved my training. The nutrition information is just so helpful. I hope to join next year's course to improve my knowledge, and I just wanted to thank you. Hopefully you can help me, as I would really value your opinions. Thanks, Kim."
Kim, firstly, I love how objective you've been about everything. I think it's really cool. Like, you've really stood back. You've said, this is where I want to go. This is how I want to train. This is what I'm currently doing. And I really like that. And I don't think there's enough of that in health and fitness, of being really objective and just spending a bit of time. Like you said, you bought one of my ebooks. You've sat down. You've calculated things. You work out where you're going wrong. Yes, you don't feel you've got everything quite right yet. And that's why you've written into the show. But you're getting there. So that is awesome, firstly. So I'm going to pick up on a couple of things. I wrote some notes as we were going, and I'm sure Tom's got some things that's rattling around in his old think tank. In terms of, going with calories, I think the first thing that we always need to appreciate is where your ideal is as a human. And don't get me wrong, that will always be like a smallish window. Like, no one burns X calories sort of per day, and it's healthy to have like a little window. So it might be that you try and aim to consume between 1,800 and 2,000 per day. And you don't get too kind of worked up if you're a bit high one day or a bit low. And sometimes it needs to be a little bit intuitive. I had someone in my coaching program, Fat Loss for Life, the other day, and they were like, Ben, if I get home and, I'm meant to be eating like 1,000 calories, or I need a big meal and I just don't feel like it, should I force it in? And my answer is usually no. Like, if your body's just saying it doesn't really want to eat, then maybe just don't worry about it. There's no harm in kind of maybe eating that food like the next day, because you might find that you wake up the next day and you're really hungry and your body just says, oh, by the way, dude, you really underate yesterday. Can I have some more food today? And then you can go through that cycle. The only time that might change is if you've done really intensive training. So, for example, when I play rugby on a Saturday, after training, I have no appetite. Literally none. And it stays like that for about 4 hours. So I know that I've been through a lot of stress. A rugby match is really hard work. And basically my appetite is severely suppressed because all the blood is basically just still running around my muscles. It's trying to repair. It's not really in my gut. It's not really interested yet. So in that case, I don't really want to ignore those signals, but I need to best manage the outcome. So in an afternoon after rugby, I'll have like liquid nutrition. So after the game, I'll have like a pint of milk or maybe a protein shake. And then I'll have a beer with, the guys after the game. And then I'll go and eat quite big later. And the chances are my appetite has changed. So we need to sometimes force a little bit of food in that environment. And this is where liquid nutrition could be helpful. But in the day-to-day running of our lives, perhaps sometimes we just need to listen to our body. So after that, in terms of actually like looking at calories, we've talked about this kind of window. Let's say you were on 1,800 calories as your baseline and you were dieting on 1,550. It would be pretty safe to jump straight back up to 1,800 if that's your true maintenance. Because ultimately, if that's your maintenance, there's no reason to gain weight. Now, what I try and do with any individual is I will try and take them back to baseline, and then I'll try and force that level a little bit higher. Now, what you tend to find is if someone's dropped their calories over time, their kind of overall energy output might drop down slightly. So I know that if I'm on a diet, over time my body sort of slows down a little bit. It's conserving energy. It's an adaptive response. Whereas if I try and start to feed it, I notice that my performance outcome improves. So let's just take the gym. If I go into the gym and I find that actually I want to do another set, I've got the energy. Or if I take a given weight, I end up doing 3-4 extra reps. And then at the end, I'm still energized. So I do a little bit of accessory work. All these things are helping to burn more calories. And in the context of building muscle, which is a good thing, if I end up building more muscle, then my basic metabolic rate increases even more. So I always try and get people into this habit of eat as much as humanly possible without getting fat. And that's both the same if you're a performance-based individual or you're losing weight. Like, there's no point restricting yourself so much that you're not feeling energized, you're not feeling great. So if you can if you can lose 1 pound, 2 pounds of fat a week and only be in a calorie deficit of like 200 calories, then do that. Because there's no point going faster if it's going to affect your energy and your well-being and all the rest of it. So I make a little jump and then sort of go a little bit slowly and then just watch the metrics. Do you gain any weight? Do you kind of feel like you've put on a little bit of weight? I don't know if you kind of are thinking anything different, Tom, before I segue onto anything else.
No, I think that's about right. I mean, at the end of the day, Kim, you've increased from 1,600 to 1,800 already, which is really good. So well done for that. Sometimes it can be like a lot of mental blocks with increasing calories. So to say that you started, that's really cool. Just on like a practical note, looking at the numbers that you come up with, I think your training days could potentially do with some revisions. So on a non-training day, you've got 1,890 calories. On a training day, you've got basically 1,000 more. So realistically, you're not going to burn 1,000 calories in a CrossFit class. It won't happen. So unless you're doing 2-3 WODs back to back plus a bit of running, I would say that is potentially a bit more food than you would need. So it probably looks like a lot of food and you're struggling to get it in because of the massive portion sizes, because it probably is a little bit too much. And the big thing that jumps out at me there is that you've increased your protein intake from non-training days to training days by about 50%. What I would do is I would drop your protein on your training days down to the same as your non-training days. You don't need to eat more protein on different days. You have a protein requirement, and that's what it is if you train. And just absorb that calorie reduction. That will reduce your calories by, if I look at this, about 300, which would probably bring you to a pretty good place to be. So from a practical perspective, that's what I would do. And I'll let you. Yeah,
you jumped in before me there. 1,000 calories in a CrossFit session. I think it's really important for people to go through a process where they really do understand what they genuinely burn in a training program and training session, and to then be able to manipulate when that changes. So if I go into the gym and I do, let's just say 25 working sets of weights, what does that generally look like? For me and my intensity and my loading and my volume, is that 250 calories, 350, 400? Know that. And then you can say to yourself, well, actually today I decided to do a half an hour run afterwards. Cool, I'm going to bolt on 250, 300 calories because I now need the extra calories. But we basically have this baseline, and this is what I do with my own training. I know that if I'm not training, I need anywhere from 2,800 to 3,100 calories per day. That's roughly my window. And then if I'm doing a weight session, I add on about 350, 400. And then if I'm rugby training, I kind of literally at the end of rugby training, I'm like, okay, was that a hard session? Was it an easy session? And I'm adding anywhere from like 300 to 800 extra calories, depending on literally what I've done in training. So I have a baseline and then I just add little bits and take away little bits. But the chances are, and this is for me how I like to manage it. And I know, Tom, I think you're similar. I will always eat lighter in the earlier half of the day because that creates more flexibility for me in the evening. So I might have only eaten like 1,800 calories up until 4 o'clock that day, and I then know that I've got like 1,000, 1,500, sometimes even up to 2,000 calories to play with later that day if anything changes. Like, for example, I might plan to go to rugby training, but something might happen and I no longer can't go. But I've already eaten 2,500 calories that day, and that might only leave me like 500 for dinner. I could, correct that the next day. I could change a few things, but I don't like to. I like to try and keep my sort of 24-hour energy balance in check. That's just how I like to do things. So that can kind of help out as well. And for me, I used to always try and kind of get all my extra calories from kind of carbohydrates, because obviously that's my energy demand. And sometimes I just found that I didn't want to. I don't want to eat 600, 800 calories from carbs all the time. So I found that to kind of help with the food volume thing, I would focus a little bit more of that on fat. So it might be that I have under-eaten quite a bit. I've had a really hard training session and I grab like a big handful of nuts rather than, having those extras carbohydrates. And in the grand scheme of my performance or energy output, that's going to be pretty sufficient. Like, I'm not really going to go into training the next day being under recovered in terms of muscular glycogen. It's probably all going to level itself out quite nicely. If I was going to get up and train early on the next day, I might have a problem there. But I always train in like the latter half of the day, most days. So I'm going to have like the meals the next day to help resynthesize any glycogen that I might have missed out on. So that kind of answers your question about boosting calorie intake. But the problem is, you've mentioned that you've got a problem with sort of a potential old school phobia of fat. So if I said to you as a client, if you've got a 300 calorie deficit at the end of the day and you want to boost it, you could just have a small handful of cashew nuts or like 4 squares of dark chocolate or whatever. And you might be going, I'm not really down with that because I'm scared of fat. But, and this is where we again need to be rational as people and say, okay, what do we believe in? If we're all sitting here saying, right, we believe that in most scenarios, calorie balance is king. And fat is just another macronutrient, like carbohydrate, like protein. So what's wrong with eating 300 calories of fat? Or 300 calories of protein? Or 300 grams of calories of carbs? If we're all counting this stuff as equal. So this is where we need to really be rational with our thought process. And the funny thing is, and I've said this quite a bit, nothing bad happens like overnight. Like, even if you went out to a restaurant and had a big meal, you're not going to wake up the next day obese. And the chances are, if you did go a little bit over or under or whatever, you can kind of counteract it the next day. You can manipulate a few things. So I want people to just sort of kind of step back from this sometimes mild anxiety around food and kind of say, do you know what, if I do wake up tomorrow and it feels like it's gone a bit Pete Tong, I can just sort of adjust it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, it's that thing of like, if you've slipped up on any nutritional plan or diet or whatever, you just literally crack back on as normal the next day. Because, like you say, even if you go massively overboard in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a huge difference. Like, if you can eat enough to gain a pound of fat in a day, you've done well. Like, really well. And a pound of fat across an entire body, you wouldn't even notice it. So, it's, yeah, totally agree with you there. So looking back, like, at some of the questions that Kim's asking as far as like increasing food and stuff goes, she mentions on training days it's just having 110 grams of fat. I would say that's enough. If anything, it's quite a lot. I would probably struggle to get that in all honesty. That's a lot more fat than I would eat. So again, I'm just saying all this so that, Kim, you kind of understand that, yeah, you're not alone in sometimes struggling to get all the food in. But it would just be a case that, as Ben just said, try to find it within those whole food snacks. So if you need to hit X amount of calories and you're struggling to do it, find a high calorie thing that you're comfortable eating and just include that in your diet. Like, if you need calories, eating those calories from a slightly less than optimal source isn't going to cause harm. So you might as well do that, especially if the backbone of your diet, as you say, is from really good sources.
I like to talk about nuts because I just think it's one of those really easy things There is very micronutrient dense, but very calorie dense that you can literally just add. Like, if you had a salad and you're like, oh God, I've only got like 400 calories here. Like, you know, crumble up or crush some almonds or throw some pumpkin seeds on it, or, you know, throw a little bit of olive oil on top. Like, it's just so easy to add calories into the diet. And also, like, if you're unsure about how to make some of these things interesting, look, again, just invest half an hour maybe in a new cookbook. Like, I bought a couple of days ago Jamie Oliver's new 5-ingredient cookbook. It sounds like the perfect cookbook for me because I am a Neanderthal with my food. Like, I don't want loads of ingredients. I don't want loads of shit clogging up my cupboards that I'm going to use once and not use again for 6 months. And this weekend, I'm going to have a little flick through, pick up some new ideas. Tomorrow night, I've got date night, and we've promised ourselves that, you know, we're going to eat. We're going to make a new salad together to have with our barbecue. Just like little things like that about, you know, me and my girlfriend Lizzie just trying to keep, you know, the diet interesting and making new foods and playing around with different stuff. So again, that's a time thing, but it really adds to our repertoire. And something that I've been doing now is I've got a rolling list on my iPhone where I basically just keep adding different recipes, but in really truncated form. So I haven't got all the ingredients there because I know how to make it, but I've literally got like Greek salad or, you know, different meal combinations. So when I go and walk around the supermarket, I can literally go like, right, I'm home for 8 meals this week and I'm away for the rest of the week. So I'm going to go and buy basically 8 meals worth in the supermarket. And it might mean that I go and buy 4 recipes and double up, or I might go and buy 2 recipes and quadruple up, and then buy a couple of snacks. And then quite often I'll buy like smoothie ingredients on top. So I quite like boosting my daily nutrient intake with like a green smoothie, so like spinach, cucumber, lime, things like that, because I really value vegetable intake. So that's just forced me to sort of stand back and say to myself, right, how do I want to plan my nutrition, but also keep on top of my variety and enjoyment? And, you know, I just keep chipping away on my iPhone note, and then when I'm in the supermarket, bang, it's just easy.
It's a pretty good idea because I think we've said this before. Like, you usually fall into like this habit of most people will eat like 10 to 15 dishes just in rotation, and it really does get boring very quickly. So it is nice to just add something new every now and then. I mean, if you can add like 1 recipe a week, that's 50 new things you can cook a year. Like, it adds up really fast. So,
yeah. But if you keep a note of all those changes, then because what quite often you have like a recipe repertoire, and 2 come in and 2 go out because you almost like forget about them. It's like when I went to Asia, I picked up so many skills of Thai cooking. I went on a Thai cookery course, and like, granted it's 10 years on, but I used none of that knowledge because I just haven't kept using it. But it's all there in the repertoire, and I love Asian cooking, like Thai food, Thai cooking, incredible. But I don't use it, so now I'm trying to keep a track of it all, so I can always go, oh, I haven't made that for ages. Yeah, banging, I'll get it in the old recipe list.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So, do you have any input on
Tom?
Yo.
Do you like Marmite?
I do like Marmite, yeah.
Do you like avocado?
I like guacamole.
Right.
I'm not that much of a fan of avocado.
I'm not a huge fan of avocado by itself, but I have a new combo for you to try, and everyone on the podcast: Marmite and avocado. So I put Marmite on toast this week, and then sliced avocado, put it on top, and then put a fried egg on top, and it was incredible.
That sounds quite good with an egg, I guess. I don't know.
Try it.
You can make it for me next time I'm down.
Try it. No, you can do it. I'm not your chef. Anyway, I think we've answered all the questions apart from the zone question. Should you try it? No. You're already doing what you need to do. Just keep tweaking. Take the advice that you've been given on board. Keep playing around with it, and I think you're going to keep refining things. The only other thing is monitoring. I think where you're at with being a size 10, I think, to me, you've got a bit of fat loss that you want, but you've also got a bit of body recomposition. So you want a bit of like kind of strength, tone, muscle building going on as well. So I would probably look at taking pictures. The problem with people that train quite a bit and have fluctuations in training load is your weight can legitimately change quite a bit. Storage of muscular glycogen, for example, hydration status. Like, you could do a really big session, eat a lot, drink a lot, that gets stored and sucked up. You might not have gained any fat weight, but you might have gained a lot of water and glycogen weight. You might have a bad night's sleep and that retains a bit of fluid. Like, all these little things, when you're lean, it can be quite problematic to constantly rely on the scale. So, I mean, this is just me. I just wake up in the morning, I look at myself, I have a little touch and a feel, and I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, I haven't stepped on a scale for literally years. I think my weight is around 82, 84, something like that. So I think taking pictures is good. If you're looking to build some muscle, taking girth measurements is good. But if you want to use the scales, then go for it. Just know that when you're into performance and when you're quite lean, those fluctuations in weight might seem quite big sometimes, and you might not see the change physically in the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention girth measurements, especially because, as you see, you've pointed out a couple of places where you think there's like a lot of fat that you would like to lose. And I mean, the first thing that I'd like to point out about those is having some fat. Where was it? I can't find it in the question. But the two areas that you mentioned where you have fat storage is just normal female fat storage sites. So that's to be expected, and there's nothing unusual about that. Unfortunately, it means that they're probably the last places to go. Same as on men, we get love handles, and it's always the last place to go. Most guys can have full six-pack and love handles at the same time. So yeah, that might take a little while, but those girth measurements will allow you to keep track of it. If you are going to control your weight and like monitor your weight on the scale, what I usually recommend to people is that you weigh in like at least 3 times a week, and it can go a little bit higher if you want. The reason for that is that it then allows you to say, right, okay, on Monday I was 68 kilos. On Friday, I was 67.5 kilos, so I'm going to ignore the fact that on Wednesday I was 72 kilos. And it just means that you can then say, okay, yeah, over the course of the last month, my weight has gone up and down loads, but the general trend is in the direction that I want it, and that's where you want to be. So if you only weighed in once a week, for example, you might hit it on that 72 kilogram day and panic and think you've gained a bunch of weight. Taking more data points just allows you to say, yeah, okay, that was just a weird day, and I don't know why I gained that weight, but I did.
I think this is, I kind of want to pick up on a point with almost like the tone of what I try and do with my work and what we try and do at Body Type Nutrition, in that what we've hinted on here so much is that we have a scientific grounding in whatever we're doing, in terms of we understand and appreciate principles. We appreciate principles of calorie balance, monitoring performance, and these fluctuations and changes that we need to account for. And that's all awesome. And what I want people to kind of take from that is that there shouldn't be any anxiety about what we're doing if we're applying the basics of science to the human body, because we know a lot about the human body in terms of what it really needs to kind of thrive. Now, on top of that, what we've just talked about is kind of almost what I would do or Tom would do as a coach, in just saying, okay, we'll play around with that. Let's listen. Let's try and add a bit of that, or perhaps we'll add a bit of fat there instead of some carbs. And that's what I want everyone to be doing. So this scientific approach takes away the anxiety. It makes us feel at ease that we're doing the right thing. But also we appreciate that we are all different people, that it is all going to change slightly, that Tom might do something a bit different to how I do it. And that is okay, because our basis and rationale is based in, the basics of scientific nutritional evidence. And either of us has just listened and responded accordingly to our context, our physiology, and our environment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a cool Venn diagram of that sort of explains what evidence-based practice is, which is what we sort of act upon all the time. And evidence-based practice is basically a combination of information from the current scientific literature, but also coaching expertise, so things that you've seen before, and then it's client preference. So if you take only one of those, you're going to be doing something wrong. And looking at all three allows you to actually be a good practitioner, because the thing is, nutrition and exercise are applied sciences rather than hard sciences like physics. So there are principles, but the principles have a lot of grey areas within them.
I think the only place that this will fall down is, and this is where kind of potential arguments arise on the internet, is that people kind of, they understand the science and they kind of highlight it, but then they completely ignore it. Like, oh, I get that paper showed that, but in my practice, I see completely the opposite. And it's like, well, hang on, let's really break that down, because the chances are it's not the opposite. There's just like, there's a little bit of context here that we haven't truly considered, or that maybe the science doesn't fully understand yet. So the evidence grounds the basic principles, and then we build on it from environment and context, rather than just saying, oh, well, actually, I believe something completely different, and all my thousands of clients have kind of proved that. And quite often, because we only see snapshots of conversations on the internet, we don't get the chance and time to delve fully into the context of where that person is coming from, because we haven't got the time to literally understand it. So yeah.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, it's kind of the thing where someone will say, right, okay, there's a research paper that says that reducing carbohydrates doesn't cause greater fat loss than reducing fat for the same amount of calories. Therefore, low-carb diet is stupid. That person's taken only the evidence, and that's only part of the picture. Another person might say, well, I've put 1,000 clients on a low-carb diet and they all lost fat, therefore low-carb diets work. And that person's equally wrong, because they've only used experience. If you sit in the middle and say, well, we know that it doesn't really matter, but because we know it doesn't really matter, we can then go with client preference. That's when you can start actually applying what we know to the real world.
Right. Tom, we will do question 2, and feel free to just roll freestyle off the back of this question, and then we'll save question 3 for next show.
Cool. So this one's a little shorter. We've got Sarah. Hi Ben, my question is about reverse dieting and whether this is a good approach to use post-diet. Sorry if you've answered this before, but it's something I'm reading mixed reviews about. In the past, after dieting down, I've always ended up going on holiday, and most of the benefits have gone within a week. This time, I have a good 4 weeks before I go away from the end of my diet phase, and I'm wondering whether gradually increasing my calories over this time would be better instead of hitting new maintenance calories straight away. I've heard that by gradually increasing, I will still be in a deficit, so potentially could continue to lose. I'm concerned about undoing all of my hard work by just returning straight to maintenance calories. Any help or advice you would give would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, Sarah. So you want me to take this one?
Well, I'm hoping we answered it in question 1.
Well, that was about what I was about to say. I mean, you mentioned it during question 1. By definition, maintenance calories will not cause you to gain weight. As you mentioned, if you are someone that trains, if you suddenly eat a bunch of carbs, you're going to gain a little bit of glycogen, so you might gain a little bit of scale weight. But glycogen and fat are not the same thing. And if you have just gone up to your new maintenance calories, you highlighted that it was especially the new maintenance calories, because obviously a lighter person requires fewer calories than a heavier person, generally speaking, then you shouldn't gain any weight. And there's no reason to worry about that happening. So I would say, personally, dive straight up. Or if you're especially concerned, then dive up to maybe 5 to 10% less than what you think your new maintenance is, and then build that last little bit up over time. But really, that's something that I would only do if you were especially worried about it, even though that I know, as we've just said, the evidence goes, no, nothing bad's going to happen. As you mentioned too, if you gradually increase from where you are, you will still be in a deficit, and that means you're going to still continue losing fat. And in my experience, if you keep losing fat right up until the day before you go on a holiday, that's why you've rebounded. Because you get on holiday, you think, right, fuck it, I'm going to eat everything in sight. And that's where the weight gain comes from. It's not because you went up to maintenance calories, it's because you overate. So if you go up straight away now to your maintenance calories, it gets you used to eating at maintenance before you go on holiday. When you get on holiday, you don't feel deprived, and therefore you don't feel the need to undo all of the hard work you've done.
Mm-hmm. Sweet! Right, that is it for another week, people. We will have another Q&A show in 3 weeks' time. So on podcast 278, me and Tom will be back and we'll drop some more of your questions. If you want your question to be on the show, email bencoomber@gmail.com with the subject line podcast, and your question can get thrown into the mix. Please make it interesting. Please make sure we haven't covered it on the show before. Please give us the appropriate amount of detail so that we can not make too many assumptions and we can really add as much context to the conversation as possible. Yes, question 1 today might have been quite long to listen to, but it really starts to build the picture, and actually we all know where we are at the end of it, rather than going, oh, I wonder if this is a factor here, or I wonder what her weight is, or I wonder what this. We got all the information, and either way, if I get too much information, I can always cut it out. If you see the show on the podcast, on social media, please do us the honour of sharing it or tagging someone in to the conversation that you believe will benefit from this information. Please do keep sharing this information. It means a lot. If you've never listened to the show, never left a review, please leave a review on iTunes. It's what helps the show grow. And if you want more information from me and Tom writes a lot, as well as I write a lot at bodytypenutrition.co.uk. Go to the blog. Tom has written a lot of very geeky articles on there. He loves a research paper. And I've written some articles, just not quite as geeky as Tom. Anyway, Tom, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the cool questions as well. There's some really good ones this week.
Yes, thank you, people, and I hope it has improved your ability to be a little bit more awesome, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, Coomber Radio, episode number 274.